So last year I talked about a walk that I went on, which was the first time I'd done this particular walk. I'd found it hard to find the path and work out which way to go. And it was a walk to the waterfalls at Dolgoch. And it was going back years ago to the first time that I did it. And we found the lower falls really easily by following a wide tarmac along the river, a wide tarmac path along the river. And you can see there's a viaduct, and the tarmac path goes through the middle of the viaduct, and it is quite obvious. There's no mistaking which way to go. So I found those really easily. Once we'd found those, we'd heard that there were these middle falls and there were upper falls, and it wasn't clear which way to go to get to those. We looked around and saw that there were these rough steps cut in the side of the rock, and there was a winding path up the hill, but we followed those up, and as we got to the top, again, it wasn't clear which way to go. To me, nothing there looked like a path. But we could hear the river, and we thought, well, we must be on the right track if we follow the river. So we carried on following the river, and we found it, followed it upstream, and we went across a few bridges and things like that, but we didn't stray from the path because we'd worked out which way we should go. The river was on this side of us, and we just kept going. We soon found the middle falls and then the upper falls as well. And I used this as a talk last year to illustrate God in our lives. As we travel through our lives, it's not always easy to find the way. There are not any signposts, and sometimes the direction we should go is not clear. Should we apply for that job? Should we stay in the house that we're in? Which school should we send our children to? And many other decisions that we have to make all the time. As a Christian, I try and look to God to follow him. And in my story, I was thinking of the river as God and using him as my guide for the journey. As long as I was in sight of him, feeling close to him through prayer or following what the Bible said or listening at church, and feeling happy with the choices I'd made, then I knew that I was on the right path. Now, I've done this walk so many times now, I know it really well. I've done it as a run at times as well, which is slightly harder. But it doesn't seem hard anymore to find the way. I don't know how we nearly got lost that first time. We know that area so well, it's not difficult. However, we went back to Wales over New Year and had a very different experience.
Again.
Okay, so the last few times that we've been to Wales and been on this walk, we've seen that a new path had been cleared near the top of the lower, and a bridge had been made over the top of this fast flowing stream, which previously there's no way you could have crossed it. And I'd been meaning to see how far I could get along the path on the other side of the river, but I hadn't tried it yet. So on New Year's Day, it was a nice day, quite dull, because that's generally how all the days were over Christmas this year, but it wasn't raining. So I thought I'd give it a go and see how I got on this walk. So I went over the bridge, this new bridge that was only about that wide, but I went over that. There was a log a bit further up. I thought that would have been the bridge at some point, but I wasn't planning on just walking over this log. It was quite a deep ravine that I was going over. But I already found that I got better views just going over this bridge. I could already see so much more around me. And I followed a very muddy path around the side of the hill. It wasn't clear how far that path was going to go, so I just thought, well, I'll just keep going. I didn't know where the path was going to end up, and I didn't know how far it was going to go, but I thought I can always turn around and go back if it comes to it. And I got to what I thought was the end of it and thought, oh, okay, well, I'll go back again now. But it wasn't. It was a hairpin bend. So as I turned round thinking I was going to have to go back, it turned out it turned and went higher up the hill. So I kept going more and more up the hill, kept finding things that I thought were dead ends, and they weren't, turned round and kept going. It wasn't a very easy path to walk along because I'm on the edge of this really steep hill, thinking I was going to slip down it or whatever, but kept going. Found a fallen tree that I had to climb underneath, found some other ones to go over the top of, all sorts of different obstacles in my path. But every time I stopped and turned round, I saw incredible views that I hadn't been able to see on the walk before, because before I'd been stuck in the trees. And at that level, this time I was higher up and could see much further. And at one point I looked down and found that the river was really, really a long way down, and I hadn't realised quite how high up I'd come. Yes, you have found the picture now. The river was a lot further down. But then I found a very green patch of ground ahead of me, and I stopped and had a look at the very green patch of ground because I was a bit suspicious. I haven't got a photo of that, Darren. But I didn't stand on the green patch of ground, and I'm pleased I didn't, because I then realised there was a whole stream running through it, and it was a proper bog. And I thought that may have been a slight challenge had I gone on that. So instead I turned round again thinking this was the end of my journey. But I then found I'd missed another turn further on and there was more path. So I kept going further up the hill. I followed this path further and further away from the river and started to wonder, where was I going? It clearly wasn't going where I thought it was, and I was going to end up much further from home than I expected to. Much of the route was precarious, the mud was very slippery, and I had to walk along a steep slope, but continued on. And as I started to worry about falling, I was thinking it was maybe a bit too dangerous. The path suddenly went the other side of a dry stone wall, and that wall then protected me from falling for a little while. I can't remember where happened next. I couldn't see the river anymore. I was so far away from it that I couldn't hear it, I couldn't use it as a guide. But as the path just went in one straight way, I just followed it. Kept going along the path, climbing over the more fallen branches, across rocky sections, hoping that my boots didn't get stuck in the mud. But I did start to really enjoy the way I was going. All of a sudden, the path began to go down again, and I saw the river. I was really pleased to see it as confirmation that I was on the right track. But up ahead, I could see that there was another tree blocking my path. And that was quite a hard one to climb over or whatever. So fortunately, there was actually a track that went round that tree that other people had clearly been that way before and already started to go round it. When I finally scrambled around the tree, down the path towards the river, I found that I'd completely missed both the middle and the upper falls by going this other way. And I'd ended up at a picnic site, which was much higher up the path. I was pleased that I knew where I was now, surprised at the different perspective that the higher view had given me. And I think I even preferred the views from much higher up than I'd had lower down, but I at least knew where I was. So what was the point of me telling you this part of the story? Wasn't I just talking about the same thing again? Well, no, what I found when I was walking was I was thinking about the impact of COVID on our lives. If you think about the things that we've done here at CCM since COVID, we firstly had to restrict our activities completely. Then we were able to start things up again, but then we had to close them. And this constant change felt like the path that I was on, that kept twisting and turning, going back on itself, and almost to the extent that I ended up back near the start at one point. We now feel here that we are able to go forward, like on the high path that I was on, but we're wary, and it is not always easy, and definitely not as easy as it was before COVID. It's one of those things, without the river being so close, do you still feel that God's here all the time? Is he there along the way? He does still protect us. He is still there. And I had that in the example of the wall along the side of the path, the track around the fallen tree, the noise of the river if I'd stopped and listened. Despite the fact it is harder going on this path, and our destination is going to be somewhere different, and we're not on the same journey that we were, but God is still with us and will continue to show himself along the way. We may have to be a bit better at stopping to listen, stopping to ask, and stopping to look. So in the Bible, in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 to 2, so let us run the race that is before us and never give up. We should remove from our lives anything that would get in the way, and we should remove the sin that so easily catches us. Let us look only to Jesus. It's not just here at City Mission that is relevant, but in all areas of our lives. Everyone has been impacted by the pandemic in some way or another. Other things have happened too in people's lives that may not be linked at all. But it may feel like you're going backwards. But if you keep on looking to God, then he will guide the way. Maybe have a think about where you are today, whether you're just at the start, questioning whether to go on a walk or not, whether you're at a fork in the path, or maybe you're climbing towards the end. But regardless of where you are on your journey, Jesus is with you, even when you cannot see him or hear him. He's there alongside you, and he will help you find the right path as long as you listen to him.